Yeah, I don't like
There's
that
John.
background.
Hello, John.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, Chairman Tim.
Way to cover all bases.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
Whoever you are.
Okay, ready to go?
I believe so. It's 6 p.m. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Chairman Sankey. And welcome to our special board meeting of the Glen Cove Industrial Development Agency. It's Thursday, September 24th. Members of the board are participating via Microsoft Teams or conference call at area code 929-229-5717. And the meeting ID is 604-494-374. Just be advised, everyone, that the meeting is being recorded. And I will ask for the, let's call the meeting to order now at 6 o'clock. Will the secretary please call the roll of the IDA members?
Joe Giuino,
Present.
John Tetta,
Present.
Jim Capiello,
Present.
Vice Chairman Hartley,
Here.
and Chairman Tanky.
I am here. Will the secretary please report on the notice of meeting?
The notice of special meeting by Microsoft Teams and teleconference was served in accordance with the IDA bylaws and the Open Meetings Executive Order 202.1.
Thank you, Camille. Tonight's meeting is in a follow-up to the September 9th special IDA meeting wherein we discussed the following two matters as it relates to RXR and the Garvey's Point project. First is the extension of the existing sales tax exemption for RXR at the Garvey's Point project. And secondly, they're requesting authorization, consent for RXR filing of an amended PUD master development application for the Garvey's Point project with the planning board. So Millen is our IDA legal counsel. He's with us this evening to discuss the proposed extension of the sales tax exemption. And Brad Schwartz is also the special IDA legal counsel, is with us also this evening to discuss the amended PUD application. So at this time, I would like to turn the attention over to Millen and Brad to discuss these matters for the board members and for the public. So without further ado, Millen, I'll turn to you first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we had a presentation from RXR on the 9th about both facets of this. This is a 10-year proposed extension of the existing sales tax letter. There is no new financial assistance being requested or considered this evening. The 10 years is designed to align to what we believe to be the current sort of worst case or long-term build out of the project, and it sort of aligns with the PUD that Brad will talk about in a minute, because that will sort of change what they build and when they build it. The resolution is fairly straightforward. One thing that we did add to the resolutions as previously extended. Please recall that this originally expired December 31st of last year. We extended it twice this year on short-term bases until we sort of got to this point where we had a feel for what the long-term construction schedule is going to be. However, in none of the documents is there a construction schedule right now. So you will notice that in the resolution, and this was part of our discussions with several board members, we've added a requirement for RXR and the IDA to come up with a construction schedule so that we have a better idea of how long it's going to be and which buildings are likely to get built at what time and what order. So that's the sales tax resolution, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Millen. I know I was on mute there for a second, but Thank you for that. Brad, is there anything you'd like to add to that initially here?
Sure, Mr. Chair, if I could very briefly just mention as the agenda notes, there's a resolution before the IDA tonight, again, consenting to RXR, filing a PUD amendment application with the planning board. As discussed last time, it's the planning board that has jurisdiction under the city zoning code to process those applications. The planning board will conduct a thorough review. It's the same process that was followed in 2008 and 2015. I'm not going to get into the proposed amendment that was presented during the last meeting. I'll say briefly, it does propose some modifications to blocks A, D, E, and F. And regarding block A, I just want to clarify something that was said during the last meeting. There's no contract requirement for block A to go last, but that was always sort of contemplated during the project approval. So I just wanted to clarify something that was mentioned during the last meeting. You'll also see in the resolution that a lot of the comments that the board has made about the proposed amendment is embodied in the resolution, recommendations for the planning board to take a close look at. So a lot of the comments that the board members have raised are captured in the resolution, again, as topics that are recommended for the planning board to study. So that's Mr. Chair, that's my overview of the PUD resolution.
Okay, and this, the purpose of this is not really, this is not a public hearing on this matter. This is a matter for the board to vote on the extension and the referral of the PUD amendments to the planning board. Is that correct, Ellen?
Yes, again, because there's no financial assistance being considered tonight, there's no public hearing requirement. And Brad can comment on this, but obviously as the planning board goes forward with its review, there will be public hearings on the PUD amendment, but that's, for another day, another jurisdiction, not tonight.
Okay. One of the things that I'd like to do is give RXR an opportunity if they wanted to make any comments tonight before the board votes on this. And I guess I would turn first to Mr. Curry if you have any comments, or Mr. Grazios if you have any comments you'd like to make before I ask the board members if there's any questions that they need answers to. But that's where I'll start it off with that. Mr. Curry, is there any comments you'd like to make with regard to this?
No, not at this time. I think I'll await questions.
Okay. Joe, is there anything you'd like to say before we ask the board for any questions?
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity, obviously, this evening, and members of the board. I thought we made a good presentation the last time we met and gave you the analogy of what our plans are for the future. Just a few things I'd like to touch on, and at the risk of repeating myself, I apologize in advance, but I think that the most important piece of this puzzle, and I'm sure you've all had the opportunity to drive through Garvey's Point of late, is that the project has been very, very successful. We have completed the entire roadway in connection with the city. We have constructed 3 buildings, 2 known as Harbor Landing, 385 market rate rentals, of which one of the buildings is at 98% capacity. The other building opened last week and is approaching 14% capacity. The Beacon, the condominium building, we've had through today 40 closings, where just over 50% sold. And whilst the market has given its ups and downs, and COVID has given its ups and downs, both in construction and in selling, RXR remains committed to continue finishing its vision of the Garvey's Point project. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the city and its agencies and this board. And it's very important to us that we're aligned, and this board understands that at the end of the day, the process that we're going through, whether it's the sales tax exemption or potentially requesting you approving us to move.
Joe, I think you froze.
Yeah.
I'll give it a second here. Okay, he probably doesn't realize he froze. Until Joe comes back on, I want to just ask any of the board members at this time. I'd like to make sure that Joe hears the questions as well, but I know John Swaggerty's here and Mr. Curry are here. Let's take any questions from the board. We'll repeat them once Joe's.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what happened, but I thought somebody on the board pushed the buzzer and. But we've been very, very successful in the overall project. We've been very successful in bringing people to Glen Cove, new people to Glen Cove, shopping in the community, working with the local retailers and restaurants, etc. And we feel very fortunate to have Glen Cove and the spirit of Glen Cove within the Garvey's Point project. These changes that we're requesting and the path forward, nobody knew in 2016 where we would be in 2020. We're projecting the future every day in the development industry. I think we have a great plan in front of us. And it's our goal, obviously, to bring the project to fruition. And we continue to look for your support and assistance in being able to do so.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate your comments. I want to turn it to the board now to see if any of the board members have any questions before we take this to a vote. So I'll ask, are there any questions from the board members? I know that board member Joe Giuino had a question that he wanted to ask. So I'm going to turn it. Joe, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
I do, Mr. Chair. Related to the sales tax, actually on both. I don't know if we want to take them both separately, but related to the sales tax, really my question is for Millen on the additional. Millen, you mentioned we added in a specific requirement that we get a construction schedule. And my concern is that it's not defined this time before we move ahead with the vote. So my question to you is, do you have any doubts that we are protected as far as a remedy if we can't come to an agreement on the construction schedule? What's reasonable?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. My answer is yes, based on all of our experience in negotiating this and a lot of other issues with RXR and the particular provisions of the relevant agreements. I'm very confident that we will be able to come up with a construction schedule. We've started having those discussions already. So, and I don't want to get into particular provisions that may be attorney-client privilege and all that, but I'm happy to tell you that I think that yes, I'm very confident that we will be able to agree on a schedule long before the date that we put in there of December 31st.
That was it for sales tax. I do have a couple related to the PUD. You want to take them separately?
Yeah, take them separately, Joe. Go one at a time, and let's get answers to them. So go ahead.
Sure. I just want to confirm, Joe, the affordable housing is an issue for me. As you know, I was involved in the project, 20 years ago. So originally, when we were thinking of the project, that the affordable units would be spread out throughout the buildings, similar to an 80-20 deal in the city. Now, my question being is that really related to the appearance, and I want really a question for the planning board more so I would ask they look at. Seems to me that the affordable units are getting pushed from the better locations to an unknown location that may not be as desirable. And that, really is a concern that I have related to that when sort of the spirit of the agreement. So I just want to make that note saying that, that's something that's a concern that I would have if it wound up in a location being far away from what the original location was intended for it to be. So the other question I would have is, Millen, the additional units, my understanding is that if they were the initial 71 units that are contemplated, would, as of today, it would not be part of the pilot agreement?
That is correct. The original approval contemplated a certain number of units, and the master tax agreement covered those. So the new 71 market plus the additional, it's either 7 or 8 workforce units, all would be outside of that. It would not surprise me if RXR subsequently came to the IDA to ask for some financial assistance on those, but they have not yet done so, so that's not before us. If RXR did so, and assuming that the requested financial assistance is over $100,000, it would be subject to a public hearing and the normal IDA process. So you're correct, Joe, in that it's not currently in the master tax agreement. And if there was a request for it to do so, it would go through the same normal procedures that we would for any other request for financial assistance. Did that address your question?
Absolutely. That's what I had.
Okay.
For both. I'm satisfied.
Okay, thank you, Joe, for those. Does any other member of the board have any questions? I'm sorry about that. I usually put it on quiet, but I forgot. Does anybody have any other questions from for RXR or in general to the board, to our council regarding these before we take it for a vote?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John, you're recognized.
Yeah, I have questions in regards to Block A, and I guess the 10-year extension and the time frame of it all. You know, I guess I can't wrap my arms around 50 years. You know, and the fact that maybe I'm looking at Brad and Ann and maybe Mr. Swaggerty. The rest of us will all be dead by the time this actually comes to fruition. So I guess I just don't know why we need a 10-year extension. It's another decade. You know, I don't understand that. But let's get back and focus on what I really want to focus on Block A is the restaurant, which got moved from the westernmost tip and got brought into the building. It may sound petty, but why can't that be a top floor restaurant? And if it's not, the first floor restaurant, what would be the floor height of that restaurant above ground level?
Okay.
Right, I'll answer that. Right now, the floor height is contemplated to be at ground level, and as an experience, at the end of the day, as an experience, we've learned that obviously we need to be ADA compliant, but moreover, going through this COVID situation, we've learned a lot about how important outside space is, and the opportunity there is really to have the walkability out to a large scale patio for outdoor dining. I'd also remind you, and I'll use elevations. I'm pretty sure you'd understand. So the first floor grade right now contemplated at that location, plus or minus a foot, is about elevation 15. So you're 15 feet above zero. Mean high water is about 5. So you're about 10 feet above the level of the active level of the water in the harbor. So you will have a view corridor, obviously, that'll give you those water views and look across the esplanade. And I know we used a rendering back on the 9th when we showed it to you. And I also would say that we have, in the spirit of confidentiality, I can't speak to names, but we've had some of the best restaurateurs that we know in Long Island, and you have all eaten in many of their restaurants, out looking at that particular space. And we do have another space, as you're aware of, in the multifamily that we refer to as E and F. And both of those spaces are very attractive to some of these restaurateurs that we've been talking about. So I'm confident we'll be able to attract in both situations very qualified restaurateurs that would love to be here in Garvey's Point. And we've had their input as well. And the majority of the input that we've received from the restaurant operators and from their consultants is, and maybe it's because we're all in this pandemic, to ensure that we have that walkability and accessibility to the exterior. The other thing that this gives you by bringing the operation of the restaurant into the actual building is when the building A is done in all three phases, which could take me being dead before it'll be done, and John Swaggerty is finishing it, to your point earlier, that restaurant essentially will be an operation for the building proper of 346 units. And there's an important point in that. Residents, in my experience with multifamily, and I have a lot, residents where you have the walkability without going outside to inside your own building to be able to go to a sort of breakfast and lunch type venue offers a restaurant operator a much better revenue, if you would, and a much better overall opportunity inside the building than they would have outside. The other thing that we spent a lot of time thinking about is by virtue of the parking system, which would be valet, we've now designed the building and the parking plates of the building to manage a lot more cars than would have been able to be managed at the restaurant at the point, and not driving cars across the most valuable piece of the real estate, which is that green lawn running parallel to the waterfront.
Yeah, and everything you just said, I couldn't agree more with, except the last thing you said. And if that is going to be park-like property, what's the likelihood of people being standing outside that restaurant and actually blocking your view of not the beach, but to your point earlier, the water? You're going to have people just playing around outside those windows, and you're going to have obstructed view of the water with kids and dogs and everything else.
Well, again, our vision was to move the building back from the water to give the city residents and the people that may visit from outside the city the opportunity to have that portion of parkland. It wasn't necessarily in the design or the success of what the restaurant would actually have. So we were thinking in reverse of what you're saying. And I won't say that I disagree with you relative to your comment about maybe obstructed views and would it be better on the roof of the building instead of the first floor of the building. And I would also add that, you know, we continue to design, and that piece of the building is in phase 2 of our program, which would be the second phase that we build. I'll call it, 5 or 7 years from now. So again, the markets may tell us differently, and we're always moving and being flexible.
Okay. And then I have one more question. And, I've never been on an IDA before, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask questions that you may feel is stupid that I don't. So when the original payment was given in the pilot program, it was based on commercial, which was going to be putting off a lot less revenue for RXR. How does that figure in with things now?
I'm not sure.
One's a profit center, substantially more of a profit center. How do we recalculate the payment?
John, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer that, but when the deal closed in 2016, the pilot was set up for exactly the sort of mix that we have now. It is certainly true that, the project has evolved from Tom Swazi, who was thinking about like South Street Seaport, to, Marianne, who at one point was thinking of Tanger Outlet. At one point, there was a requirement for there to be a hotel. So it clearly has changed an awful lot over the years. But I can certainly say that the deal that's in place now envisioned exactly the kind of mix that we have in place now. Obviously, it would be changing again a little bit, and part of the PUD amendment would do away with the office building So, the mix will change a little bit more, but it is certainly true that the current master tax agreement was structured with the same number of heavily residential development as opposed to, prior iterations.
Okay.
And again, I'm not sure if that addresses your question, but, I can certainly speak to the current.
I'm just
master
saying
tax agreement.
71 additional luxury rentals versus commercial.
Yes. Well, the doing away with the office building doesn't change the pilot, because when we closed in 2016, what we call the Block Block D site was contaminated enough that it was not certain that it would ever be transferred or that it would ever be cleaned up to a standard where it could be used. So if you look at the master tax agreement, there's sort of a gap. There's just no money allocated for it. We weren't quite sure, quite honestly, what would ever happen to it. So removing that part from the master tax agreement doesn't change any of the payments. To address the other side, that's certainly a fair comment, that the 71 units are, maybe more profitable, maybe not. But again, what that pilot is going to be, whether or not it'll have any pilot at all, is, I think, an open question for another time.
Bill, and I would just to see it. I think I know where John's going. Yeah, the point, I think so. I watched the live stream, even though I was not at the last meeting. I think the point of the matter is that the per square foot price is significantly going up on the return for RXR. I think Joe mentioned 350 to 4. He's going to do higher end units, higher end rental units, which is more revenue. So I think John is trying to ask, that they're making more money and not paying any more taxes, which is kind of counterintuitive to what that happened. So does the pilot address that or not? I think it's what John's trying to say with the additional revenue they're getting. Currently, not the additional units. I mean, I know the answer, but I think I'm just.
Oh,
God, did I frame your question correctly?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. It does indirectly, and let's talk about the condo units, because I think that's where the driver is for the master tax agreement revenues, and it does, again, sort of indirectly. And what I mean by that is there is a schedule of the pilot payments, yet there is a true up, if you will, every 5 years. So every 5 years, we look at the assessed value for each of the condos and then recalculate, if you will, the pilot payments. So to the extent that the condos are selling for more than what they were originally contemplated to sell for, then the pilot does readjust periodically. It's not every year, but it's every 5 years. There's a readjustment. So it does, and presumably the pilot revenue would go up if the sales are as high as as we suspect that they are, and will continue. Does that address your question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry if I went off the wrong direction before.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
That's good. I mean, these questions are important to be asked, John, and I appreciate you asking them, Joe, as well. And I think Millen, and between you and the RXR team here, you've answered those questions. But does anyone else on the board have any other issues or questions that they would like to have answers before we put this to a vote?
Vincent Hartley, I have one. Since we've had the backlog because of the virus changing everything with the workforce, have we come up and reassessed, what the schedule is for the public amenities now? So I've got people asking me, when this is going to be done or that's done. I think you're back on working. When I reviewed it last Saturday, I think done tremendous inroads. But if we get a schedule that we can put out, I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, I think that's where we started off with today is, about talking about the schedule. And like I said, between now and the end of the year, I think RXR is, well, I'll leave it to Joe, but going to get us some sort of schedule, at least on the beginning of construction on the buildings. Maybe not for every single one of them, but certainly give us an idea of where we're going. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm
Chair-
looking for
Chair-
public
Chairman
amenities.
Tanky, yeah, Chairman
Okay.
Tanky, I think
Now,
what Vincent,
you put out a lot of things out to the public saying, this is what they're doing, this is what we're doing, and everything came to a crashing halt. So what I'm saying is if we could get a schedule together again, so that people can then see it, follow it, I think it'll help us on the board a lot more. Okay, because that's what the community is looking for.
You think they're looking for it on the public amenities side of things, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
and Vincent, we'd be happy to get you that scheduled. It won't take until December. We'll have it to Chairman Tanky's office in a week's time. And it'll be very helpful because it's a color-coded schedule that blocks out each of the amenity areas and gives date certains. So we lost 108 days in total due to COVID. And then there was a little bit of ramp-up time. But by and large, the bulk of the project and landscaping completes in early spring of next year. We will, just to talk to it for a minute, if I may, Chairman Tanky.
Yes.
For Vincent's benefit, we are now we've completed all of the dredging that's required in the creek. And if you drive down by the Anglers Club, you'll see we're putting the sand bed at the bottom of the sea as we speak. We have all of the docks sitting up on lot E and F. They've been delivered. And the week after next, the marine contractor will start driving the piles that secure the docks in the Anglers Club Marina. So by November, the Anglers Club Marina will be fully complete. We'll then pull the barge down to the Transient Marina, where we'll do the similar gravel bed, then the sand bed. We have a hard stop in December, so we must make that date because that's when the dredging window ends. However, I will say we've already been in conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers, and it looks like we'll be granted a week or two extension on that, which will give us that little bit of buffer we need so that through the winter we can drive the piles and get the docks in the Transient Marina. Working from the east to the west, the area of the Transient Marina upland, that piece of the esplanade behind Building I will probably be the last, so that'll come in later in the spring. Going to the west, as you saw, close to the circle, the one gazebo is done there, and portion of the lawn is in as we speak. And now we're over on the south side, closer to the bulkhead, putting in the esplanade. That's going in now and will be completed before the winter, which will take you up over through the back of the Anglers Club. And you'll see this week the cap going in along the bulkhead adjacent the Anglers Club Marina. So that path will continue and be completed by winter all the way to the ferry terminal. Flipping over to the other side of the ferry terminal, the dog park area is completed. We're about to open it in about a week. We're just waiting for some signage. And then a portion of that esplanade going to the west is completed behind Building B. And we're working then all the way from the western end back to Building B. So it's unacceptable, but it's actually just putting it together, connecting the pieces of the esplanade that will bring life to that walkway system. So I will, with that explanation, I will get to Chairman Tanky's office a color map in the next 10 days or less that he can distribute to the board members so that you can have a good tracking system on what's going on with the public improvement work. I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Does that answer your question, Vincent?
Yeah, it certainly does.
Thank you. Jim Capiello, you were about to ask a question. Do you have a question for us?
Yes, I do. Most of the board members covered my concerns tonight already. I just wanted to make have a question about the parking. I'm looking at the PUD agreement and the parking next to the ferry. They're adding parking there, and I think that's a great idea because my first trip down there, I thought the ferry parking was woefully inadequate. My question is the public parking that you're putting in there and other places, is that going to be fee parking? Are you putting up payment areas, or is that free parking? And how is it being proposed?
It is contemplated to be free parking, municipal parking. There may be some requirements, and I can honestly say we haven't gotten there yet in terms of conversation regarding overnight parking. I think that we're going to discuss that there would be no overnight parking allowed except for certain areas, because I don't want people, to just use it as a park and ride. I want to make sure that it's, strictly for the ferry terminal, and then the weekends and the evenings for the community at large to enjoy all the park area and that. We're adding about 160 something spaces to that lower end of
Right.
lot D and E.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jim, just to answer your question, there's about 100 spots at the ferry terminal itself, and then the additional parking spaces that'll be added will add a significant number of additional spots for when the ferry gets operational. So that's a very good question. Thank you, Jim, for that.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Being that there are no other questions from the board, we're going to move on to section 4 here, resolutions, and I make a motion to adopt resolution 4A. The resolution reads, resolution of the Glen Cove IDA authorizing certain matters in connection with its straight lease transaction with RXR Glen Isle Partners, LLC and its affiliates. This is for the sales tax exemption extension. I ask for a second on that.
Vincent Hartley seconds the motion.
Okay, that was the second by co-chairman Vincent Hartley. Will the clerk please, the secretary please poll the members on resolution 4A?
Joe Juino,
Aye.
John Teta,
I vote yes.
Jim Capiello,
Aye.
Vincent Hartley,
I vote yes.
and Chairman Tanky.
I vote aye. The second part of this evening was the request by RXR Glen Isle to ask the IDA board to forward the amended PUD master development plan to the planning board. And I make a motion to adopt resolution 4B, and I ask for a second.
I second that motion.
That is co-chairman Vince Hartley. Are there, well, we already went through the questions, so I'm going to ask the secretary, please, to poll the IDA board.
Joe Juino,
I vote yes.
John Teta,
I vote yes as well.
Jim Capiello,
Yes, as well.
Vice Chairman Hartley,
Vincent? Vince, we're asking for your vote.
Sorry, my speaker stepped out. I vote aye.
and
Okay.
Chairman Tanky.
I vote aye. Those were the two items that we had on this evening. I want to thank RXR again for coming to personally be here at the meeting to answer questions. I also want to thank all the board members for their attention and their questions to this. These matters are, we want to take our time when we do these, and we've learned that it's better to spread these out and give time for the board members to absorb the issues that are coming before them, before voting on them. And again, this was originally brought on September 9th. And we've had plenty of time since that time to go over and ask questions and get answers, not only from our council, but from RXR's team as well. And I want to thank Joe, Peter Curry, and John Swaggerty also for your help in doing that. And I appreciate your time for that. So without any further delay, we're going to move on to 5, which is if there's no further business for the IDA board at this time, I make a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening, and I ask for a second.
I second that motion.
That is Co-Chairman Vincent Hartley. Will the secretary please poll the board?
Joe Gelino,
Aye, yes.
John Tetta,
Yes.
Jim Capiello,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Hartley,
I vote aye.
and Chairman Tanky.
I also vote aye. And that concludes our meeting, our special meeting this evening on these 2 issues. I wish to thank everyone for their participation. I thank the public also for taking the time to listen in on this, and I appreciate getting through this as quickly as we did, and the information that was put forward so that we can have an educated vote on this matter. And I thank you for that as well.
And Mr. Chairman, board members, on behalf of RXR, we thank you very much for your consideration and for your approval of these resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. I appreciate that. Okay, everyone, that concludes our meeting for this evening. And thank you so much for your help on this, and Millen as well. And the board members, again, thank you, and everyone have a great evening. So,
Thank
thank
You
you.
also. All right, bye-bye.
Thank
you. Good night.